What's up, Toilet Water Squad? I'm Big P and I'm streaming out some beef and broccoli. This uses a technique called velveting that's used in a lot of Chinese cooking. It's similar to marinating meat, but it's a little more food sciencey and it just gets it really silky and tender. So it's time for the meats. You can use a bunch of different types of beef for this. You could use flank steak, skirt steak. I've done it with flat iron steak. I like flat iron steak. I think that's underrated. You can do it with sirloin, or if you're rich, you could do it with a ribeye. I don't know. Do it with whatever you want to do it with. I'm using a bottom sirloin. I'm I'm using bottom sirloin here because it was super cheap at the store. There was a deal, and I would be insane not to take this deal. It's a leaner cut of beef, but it checks out. But it came with three steaks, and I froze two of them. I've never bought bottom sirloin before, so I looked up what to do with it. And one of the things was beef and broccoli, so that's why I'm making this. If you have any ideas for the other two bottom sirloins that I have in the freezer, let me know. But I start off by freezing this one too, but you should just freeze it for like 20 minutes. I ended up getting distracted by like some work stuff, and I left it in the freezer for 2 hours, so it's a little hard to cut. But you should freeze it for about 20 minutes to maybe like an hour, to make it easier to cut thinly. If it's nice and firm, it's easier to get nice thin slices. And you want to cut it diagonally against the grain to make it as tender as possible, because that'll cut as many fibers as small as possible, basically. And I'm actually not trying to get my cuts as thin as possible. I'm probably going for like, I guess, like about 1/8 of an inch. I'm not really sure. I'm not good at measurements, but just imagine beef and broccoli and how thick the beef is in that, and try to get it to be about that. Another thing that I'm terrible at is figuring out which way the grain is going. I think I did it right here, but I'm still not completely sure. I'm pretty sure I did it right. Once you get it all cut up, you want to put it in a bowl, and we're gonna add some ingredients to it to velvet the meat. All right, so these measurements are gonna be per pound of beef. So I have about a pound of beef in there. So I put in 1.5 teaspoons of cornstarch, a quarter teaspoon of baking soda, 1.5 teaspoons of soy sauce. That's light soy sauce. If you care about which soy, if you have multiple soy sauces, it's light soy sauce. Um, and if not, just use whatever soy sauce you have. And then 1.5 teaspoons of some sort of wine, like Shaoxing wine is probably like the one you would want to use, but I'm just using a white wine. I'm just using Chardonnay, and you can do that too. And then a half a teaspoon of MSG, and then 1.5 teaspoons of some sort of neutral oil. I'm using sesame oil. You could use like vegetable oil or avocado oil, just anything that doesn't have a strong flavor, really. And if you care about like seed oils or something like that, then do whatever you want to do. I don't care. Once you get all that in the bowl, you want to mix it up, and I would say your hands are the best thing to use for this, because you want to kind of like work it in there, and doing that kind of helps to tenderize the meat as well. But that baking soda is probably the main thing that helps to tenderize the meat. But yeah, you want to be a little rough with it, and then once you're done, let it sit for about 15 minutes, and then it'll be ready to cook. My hands are getting pretty cold as I am doing this because I froze my meat too long, so don't freeze it for too long. All right, so now we're gonna get the broccoli ready. I just got like a head of broccoli from the store. You could get like broccolini or something. I've done this with broccolini. It was great, but the store by me sucks, and it doesn't always have it. You know what? It extremely rarely has it. It's had it like 2 times, and I've gone to this store for I think like 5 years. So yeah, so cut the flowerets off of the broccoli and cut them into like more manageable, like bite-sized type pieces. And then you can also cut up the stems and add those too. I see a lot of like YouTubers and like Instagram chefs and stuff like say that you can use the stems, and they're like, and then they just put theirs aside, or um, you can reuse oil or whatever if you're deep frying stuff. But they always just say that, but they never show it. So I don't really believe that anybody actually does it. But I'm going to do it in this video for the stems. What I'm doing is I'm putting the flowerets in one colander or strainer or something in the sink, and then I'm putting the stems in a different one, and I'm washing them both. And then I'm going to put, when I cook this, I'm going to put the stems in first in the pan first, so that they cook a little longer than the flowerets. You also might want to use like a peeler and peel the outside of the stem off. I'm noticing now that I did not do that in this video, but you can. You still have time to not make the mistakes that I have made. All right, now we're getting into the sauce. You want to have everything ready to go pretty much before you start cooking things in this dish. So we're putting the sauce together now. So I'm starting with 2 cloves of garlic, and then so I'm gonna like lightly mince that, and then about an equal amount of ginger. Recently, I've decided that it's okay for me to be wasteful when peeling my ginger because it's just going to go bad in my fridge anyway, so there's no point in me being as careful as possible to just get the skin off. So I don't know. I don't know if you guys have any tricks for peeling ginger, but if you do, let me know. I've heard the spoon thing. I don't. I'm not good at it. But anyway, once the ginger is peeled, I dice it up. So I don't. It's like similar to how you dice an onion if you know how to do that. But basically, you just put it on its side and make cuts down it, and then turn it on its next side, make cuts down it, and then cut perpendicular to those cuts. And then once I get that all cut up like that, I just cut it up more on the cutting board. Once you have the garlic and the ginger in the bowl, you want to add let's say like about a tablespoon and a half of soy sauce and an equal amount of oyster sauce. Oyster sauce is delicious. If you've never had it, highly recommend getting it and adding it to this dish. But yeah, equal parts soy sauce and oyster sauce, about a tablespoon and a half, maybe 2 tablespoons of each. Then put in about like a teaspoon of sugar and a teaspoon of cornstarch. These are gonna help thicken the sauce and make it nice and good. Then I add a pinch of MSG. You can skip that if you don't have MSG. It'll make it better, but it also, if you don't have it, you don't need it. I don't add any salt at this point because the soy sauce is pretty salty, and I guess the oyster sauce probably is too. At this point, we're ready to start cooking. I do kind of move the beef around a little bit more because it's not as freezing cold anymore, so I can kind of tenderize it a little bit without freezing my hands. Here's another step that you can probably skip if you don't have sesame seeds, but I think it does enhance the dish quite a bit, but it's not fully necessary. I just toast some sesame seeds in a dry pan, and then I get them out. The pan's pretty hot, so they toast really quickly. I'm not saying you should do that. I'm not. It might be better if the pan was not as hot as it is when I do it here, but it just takes like a second to toast these. And then I put those off to the side in a bowl, and I add my broccoli stems to the pan with some neutral oil, and I cook those for about a minute, and then I add the broccoli flowerets, and then I cook those for about 2 minutes. Once the flowerets have been in there for about 1 to 2 minutes, I add some salt, and then I pour in about 2 tablespoons of water and cover it with a lid so that it steams. And I let it steam for about 1 minute. At this point, the broccoli's ready, so I take it out of the pan, set it aside in a bowl, and move on to the beef. I forgot to mention that the pan should be pretty hot for the broccoli and for the beef. So the pan should be nice and hot again, add some more oil, and then put the beef in just like one layer. So you might have to do this in 2 batches, or depending on how big your pan is and how much beef you're doing. You could do it in 1 batch, or you could do it, I don't know, you might have to do a bunch of batches. I don't know how much you're doing. But you want to get that beef, flat on the pan and leave it there for about 45 seconds. Don't stir it. And then flip it all and leave it on the other side for about 45 seconds. And you want to get some nice color on there. Some of these have some nice color, some of them don't. And yours might turn out the same way, or you might do it better. But those ones that are darker, that's more what you want it to look like. So you want a screaming hot pan for this, and then if it's still pink in the middle a little bit, that's actually good. You want it to be just a little bit pink in the middle, and then you can set that aside and put it in the same bowl as your broccoli. Then lower your heat to medium and stir up your sauce and add it to the pan. Since I have an electric stove, my heat doesn't really go back down too quickly, so I put it half on the burner and half off. And then I scrape up anything that's on the pan, and I let it cook for about a minute, and that'll thicken it up. You want to make sure that you stir it again before adding it, just to make sure that the cornstarch is all incorporated, because if you heat the cornstarch before it's all incorporated, it'll clump up and stuff, and you don't want that. So after about a minute, add the beef and broccoli back to the pan and stir it all up so that it gets nice and coated in the sauce. And at this point, I just add most of my sesame seeds that I had toasted. If you didn't toast them, then, don't do that because you don't have them. But I like to save a little bit of sesame seeds just to garnish with, well, after I put it on the plate. So now you just got to stir it up and taste for seasoning, which I did not do, and add some salt if you need salt, and add some black pepper. I do add some black pepper in the video. But then after that, you just plate it up, and you can add some sesame oil if you have it, and you can add the sesame seeds if you have that, and some more black pepper if you want. And feel free to add anything to the sauce, or just do whatever you want. You could put some like red pepper flakes or something in the sauce if you want. If you want to make it a little spicy, or just do if you have an idea, try it. Let me know. Let me know if you do something different and if it tastes good, and maybe I'll try it in the future. If you have any other ideas on what I should do with the other two bottom sirloins that I have, please let me know. But at the moment, you should be really proud of yourself. You just made some beef and broccoli, and that's a thing that you can do. Thank you for spending some time in the Danger Kitchen. I've been Big P. And then until next time, I don't know. I guess until next time, that phrase is confusing to me. But bye. Thank you for watching. Well, it seems our time has come to an end. Thank you for watching Toilet Water Squad. Like and subscribe, and check out some other videos about ice cream or high altitude baking or just other food stuff. And big shout out to the Upper Decker members. You guys are keeping a roof over my family's head. And remember to hug your pets. Give them a nice little pet and give them a big ol' hug from Big P. That's me.